in detail update to what is going on with the markets, the new governmental administration, the tax law changes, all those different things. So in a minute, I'm going to fill you in on how you can actually get a replay of that. But we've got a good show for you planned today. But without further ado, let's get right into it, okay? So we're going to talk about the virus update and unemployment. Those two things are working hand in hand right now. And the unemployment is also driving the Fed's decisions. The Fed's decisions and the unemployment is also driving what the stimulus package is going to be, as well as what the Feds are doing to either cap or uncap inflation, as well as the stock market and housing. And then finally, normally what I've been doing during these shows is I have been starting off with the economic mapping. We're actually going to put that at the end. I've gotten some very good emails, some very good feedback from some watchers and some good people that are watching every Friday. And they said, you know, you're showing this economic mapping, which is the culmination or summary of it, which the reason I did that was I know that some people's attention span is very small when it gets to these kinds of things. Some geeks like me love this stuff, but you know, some people just kind of want to get to the answer. So I put it at the beginning of the show. However, if you're watching now and you just want to get to the econ map, then you can just go on to our YouTube channel and you can download this and just fast forward. That's the beauty of watching these things at a later time if you want. So anyway, let's start off with the webinar. And the webinar, I'm going to do a second webinar. The webinar is going to be on February 11th. That is 4:00 p.m. Pacific time. Now, what I'm going to do during this webinar is something very unique. I've not done this before. Most of the webinars that I do, is on economics, it's on taxes, it's on asset protection, it's on trusts, it's on those things. But what we're going to do this time is we're actually going to teach you how to use a very important tool, and that tool is called eMoney. And eMoney is a very simple tool that can pretty much, it's going to simplify and automate your entire retirement plan, your entire financial situation. Even if you're not retired, it'll help you automate and simplify things. And what's going to help you understand a couple things. And number one, what I'm going to do during this webinar is I'm going to show you how you can use this tool to automate and bring in every single account that you have into one single platform. A lot of times people are logging into their bank, their credit card, their investment accounts. They log in to look at their annuities, all in different websites. Well, this one tool is going to bring all of that information in together. And it just takes a very little bit of time to set this thing up. And then you can log in and it pulls all the data in. We're going to show you how to do that. Second is we're also going to show you how I've used it and I've caught unauthorized access on checking accounts and on credit cards. Now, typically credit cards are pretty good, but checking accounts fail miserably. If somebody hacks into your checking account or uses a debit card, usually you don't know that unless you're looking at your accounts every single day, and most people don't do that until you actually reconcile the account. I'm going to show you how to use this tool to actually recognize the day of. And 2 times I've caught this where people have hacked into a checking account and tried to use a debit card to take money out. One was $5 $99 charges at a Georgia gas station. Well, I live in Nevada, so that's pretty hard for me to do that unless I'm traveling there, and I wasn't. So I'll show you how to use that. And third, I'm going to show you how you can utilize this tool to really figure out how much money you can spend without running out of money. And then fourth, I'm going to show you how you can actually look at this to understand how much you have in each one of the 3 buckets. Now, if you don't know what the 3-bucket strategy is, well, then you can always go to our website and there's videos on how we actually manage assets within the 3-bucket strategy. And then finally, we're going to show you on this webinar how to use the online vault to store all of your trust, estate, and healthcare documents. Because basically paper should be out. If you're of that school, I just want my trust and my healthcare stuff in paper, we've learned the hard way with a lot of people that didn't want to go to this online vault, that if you're traveling and you get sick, or if you're in an ICU, they can't get to your legal documents. So we're going to teach you how to utilize this and then actually authorize certain people within your family so that they can get to these legal documents in case of an emergency. So this is a no-miss webinar. Now the catch is you got to make sure you get on the first 100, because that gives you the opportunity to participate and actually ask questions along the way, because unfortunately our technology system only allows 100 people on. Now, all you have to do is go to our website. It's hhrdm.com/webinar. So just go to H&H Retirement Design and Management. It's hhrdm.com/webinar, and you'll see a register button. Just click the button, put it in there, and you'll get a notice that you're on the list. That's as simple as that. All right. Last, before I jump into the actual economic updates, I've been getting a lot of emails and asking for, can we get a replay of that extensive update, the economic update and tax update that you did last week, or at the beginning of January, middle of January, I guess. And yes, you can. All you have to do is, to get access of that recording, just send an email over to replay@hhrdm.com. Replay@hhrdm.com, and we will get you a private link to that webinar recording. Okay, let's get into the update here as of January 21st. I'm going to switch gears a little bit this time, because basically, for almost a whole year, my focus was on tracking the pharmaceuticals and the science and the deployment of the vaccine. That was the critical, pivotal point as to a lot of my econ mapping. So now that that is actually out, I'm not going to go through the extensive list of all of the different companies. Right now, there's still 45 companies that are in development, but what we're going to do now is we're going to actually start tracking the deployment of the vaccine. Because now that we have the vaccine, it's not going to change the world until it is fully deployed. So let's start off with, on December 14th, the vaccine began. Right now we have 56 million doses. That's, well, it should say doses, deployed in 52 countries. 2.8 million a day are going out, and in the U.S., 18.4 million doses. That's 939,000 doses per day, and the average deployment is 5.6 per person nationwide. So what that means is, let's say out of 100 people, 5.6 people so far, on average in the United States, are getting the vaccine. However, some states are lagging far behind other states. As an example, my home state, Nevada, we're failing. Huge governmental failure. I think the governor needs to get a kick in the rear end and say, hey, what do we need to do to get this thing going? Because I don't know what's going on there in the Nevada government, because they're at one of the lowest deployment rates out there with one of the highest tourism rates. It's despicable. Alaska is at 11 per person doses per 100. So they're up on top of things. Most states that you look at, they're in the 6 to 7 per person per 100 person range. And so again, we have 8.49 billion doses worldwide made. That's half of the world's population right now. We have those doses physically manufactured. It's a matter of getting it out into the public. So the problem is not creating the dosage. The problem is the disbursement, the cold storage, and then the adherence and willingness to get the shot. So let's take a look at a map. As you can see, the darker the green, the more the deployment. So those states that are really doing a great job is North Dakota, South Dakota, New Mexico, Alaska, West Virginia. Those moderate states, Utah, Colorado, Florida, etc. But the failing states, as you see, my home state of Nevada is the worst. So hopefully they can turn it around and maybe get some good leadership in the government there and get that vaccine deployed. So Nevada right now is only at 3.77 doses per 100 people. Again, failing on all fronts. And you can see just in a comparison in worldwide dosage deployment, the U.S. right now has doses administered of $18 million or 5.62. But let's compare that to Israel and UAE, 35 and 20 respectively. So while we think we're doing a good job and while we think we have this great system of distribution in our country, it's pretty obvious we're failing on a lot of fronts. So the unemployment is just closely tied to that dosage deployment and getting these states back open. And unfortunately, we've gone backwards. In December, we lost 140,000 jobs net. and we were running about 600 to 700,000 in new unemployment gain or claims between August, September, October, November. Then the holidays hit, and now this last week we're up to 900,000. So we are going backwards, but the unemployment rate itself is staying at 6.7 because, again, it's net, and the way that the government figures that out is if you stop looking for a job or you go off of unemployment, you come out of that calculation. So I would probably peg that unemployment closer to maybe 8.5 or 9%. Fed decisions in Treasury. Well, Yellen is holding confirmation hearings today, Friday the 22nd. We don't know if it will be confirmed because there's some opposition to that. What she favors is a large stimulus. I agree with her 100%. I give her an A triple plus on that. However, she does not differentiate between free cash flow or targeted cash flow. So one of the numbers we're looking at is the credit per capita and the savings per capita. During the virus, the savings per capita went up and the credit due per capita went down. And so it's pretty obvious that those people that are getting these stimulus checks, they're not all spending it. They're hoarding it, they're investing it. That is giving some pump to the stock market. But we also have the highest, right now there's close to $4.4 trillion sitting in cash accounts. That's not invested in the markets. But she does, if you look at it, she supports city bailouts. And I give her an absolute failure on that regard. And as far as the stimulus is going, I got some responses from the webinar last week. When I said I agree with that, and I got some good and some bad, kickback on that. Let me be very clear on this. I don't believe in getting anything for free. I shouldn't get anything for free that I didn't work for and contribute and give back a service. And I don't think anybody else should either. Unless they are physically and mentally disabled and unable to work for themselves, they have the ability to work. They can go out and work. They can find something. Doesn't matter. You might be a middle manager. Well, if I was a middle manager and I had to go out and shovel driveways or dig ditches, and if I was physically and mentally capable of doing that, if that's what I had to do, that's what I would do. And so the $1,400 check per person, there's no differentiation. I think it should be those people that are affected by the coronavirus. I think it should be those people that agree to get the vaccine. There's got to be some target trigger in there, right? So you got to make sure you're getting that economic exchange. And then as far as supporting city bailouts, I don't agree with that in any regard at all. So for some of you that have been watching these broadcasts, I was very vocal at the beginning on Newsom and Cuomo and some of these governors that were bucking the science. They were going against the science and they were continuing to shut down. And if you remember during those broadcasts, I said this is a ploy. This is the concept that some politicians have. The hurt of many is justified by the benefit of many or more, right? It is that rationale. So, you look at Cuomo. That was a pure play for FEMA emergency funds. As soon as Biden was elected, what did New York ask for? $2 billion in FEMA emergency funds, and Biden's going to grant it. So, that doesn't have to go through Congress. We know that this was a little game that they were playing. They put a lot of people out. Why? Well, we just look at what the exact science did in Florida versus some of these other states that shut down. There is the same per capita of infection rate, same per capita of death rate in Florida where there are no shutdowns versus some of these states like New Jersey. And if you don't think that these states have the control, look at what they just did to that gym in New Jersey. So they basically said, listen, we're not shutting down and we have to stay open because we have families and kids and we got to have food and a shelter. And you're not providing anything to self-employed people. And the PPP was a joke at 2.5 months of payroll, especially if you're a small business self-employed. And so what New Jersey did was they basically went into all of these owners' accounts and they cleaned the account out. They completely just wiped their accounts. They took the money. And so if we ever think that we don't live in sort of a third world country when it comes to that, that is perfect proof that they do this. And then when the owners tried to get a hold of the state of New Jersey, they got the bounce around. Well, we didn't do it. The state says we didn't do it. Maybe it was the municipality. The municipality says, well, we didn't do it. They can't figure out who took their money out. It just says withdrawal from state of New Jersey. So nobody's claiming any kind of responsibility. So again, this is what's going on in some of those states. And it's despicable, to be honest with you, because these states have no regard for that human. So anyway, predicted outcome. I think that 80% of Biden's stimulus package is going to be approved. I think it's going to cause massive inflation because you're going to put somewhere between 1.2 and 1.9 trillion dollars back into the markets. You're going to put that in people's pockets. You're going to see massive inflation, probably in the 5 to 6 to 7% range for at least a year or so while that's working its way through the system. I think that's going to send the stock markets at least 10 to 20% higher. And if we watch what happened in the 1919 flu epidemic, and that resulted in the 1920s, the beginning or the catalyst for the Roaring 20s, where people just spent and went crazy. During the webinar, I actually gave some history on, it happened in the 1300s with the Black Plague. It happened in 1919. So history does repeat itself. And those that do not learn from history will be condemned to repeat the bad parts of that history. And so in 1919, that was the catalyst for the Roaring 20s. And then you remember what happened in 28, 29. We had this massive stock market crash because of unregulated markets. Now, we have regulated markets right now, and it doesn't mean that we're going to go through what they went through in 28, 29. But it does mean that when this steam runs out, everybody's going to have to make some adjustments, right? So let's look at, again, if I mentioned that webinar, if you want to get that information on those, what I talked about with the Black Plague and what I talked about with the 1929 playbook, go ahead and send us an email to replay if you want to have that webinar replayed. And the upcoming webinar, again, if you're joining us late, hopefully you can rewind this and watch all the details that I gave about this upcoming webinar. But I would suggest, if you want to use this e-money tool, definitely jump onto this webinar because it is the first 100 people only, and we're going to show you how to use that e-money tool. Anyway, let's get to Fed decisions. Well, my opinion is interest rates are going to stay low until mid to late of 2022. I think that Biden is going to get his way with the mortgage foreclosure delay. That approval is delaying the supply and demand until fourth quarter of this year. We also are going to see results of higher taxes in 21 all the way through 2025, if not longer. Again, I don't have any predictions on the midterms, and I don't have any predictions on the 4-year election. That's too far to even know who's going to be running. So we have no idea what that tax situation is going to look like. But as I've stated for a year, somebody is going to have to pay for this almost now $6 trillion in stimulus package to bail us out of this problem that we've been having. And again, let's take a look at what this stimulus actually is going to do. And when I get to the end and the list of actions, I've gotten emails from people saying, listen, you talk about this paradigm shift portfolio. That's right. We shifted our portfolios in March of last year, and we did it by about a 20-25% into a paradigm portfolio. And then we gradually worked our way into that throughout 4 different changes through last year. And that has worked out fantastic. It has just been one of the best decisions that we made. But again, that decision is based upon my experience. That decision is because I went through and I was managing assets during the terrorist attacks. And I watched how people changed habits, and they did not revert completely back to the same habits after the terrorist attacks. This is very much the same thing. It's based upon fear. It's based upon containment, etc. So I'll give you some information on the paradigm shift. Oil employment and equity conversions. So we know right now that Biden struck down on his first day the Keystone XL program, which is going to put 3,000 to 5,000, including vendors, people out of work. They're going to have to readjust. And, I talked about this back in 1989, 1990, when we went through the tech crash of 1990. And all these people in the tech world got laid off. And what I kept saying is, listen, I know it looks bad, but these people will readjust. They're not, because they might be a software engineer, doesn't mean that they can't learn how to sell software. Doesn't mean that they can't do other things and readjust within that discipline. If you're in the energy sector, you're going to have to readjust. Where? You're going to have to readjust to electrical, wind, solar, and hydrogen. If you look at how people readjust with jobs, it means that that's where the money is going, and it means that's how we should invest. That's why we changed a lot of what we were doing with that kind of dynamic. Restaurants, well, restaurants, you got conversion to home delivery and consolidation. You've got companies going out of business. You got restaurants going out of business. And then you've got restaurants like Chipotle who adjusted quickly and they're up 400%, right? So again, they have to adjust, but that also gives us the understanding of where we have to invest our money. Retail and commercial. Well, let's look at retail and commercial. You have a return to trust and consolidation and conversion to online. So in the retail space, you might have gone to a sporting store to buy something. Now you might buy it on Amazon or Walmart.com because now Walmart has a competing subscription service to compete with Amazon, which is great. I mean, this is going to be good competition. That's what we're all about, right? We have commercial real estate, return to work and conversion of purpose and use. So when we look at certain places, a great example is in Florida, they just bulldozed an entire mall, basically to make more parking and more roadways to Disney. And we're seeing malls converting to data centers. We're seeing office buildings being converted to energy storage systems. So again, they don't just go away. We adapt, as Darwin said, it's not the stronger or the smarter who survive, it's those who can maintain the change, right? Maintain the change. And so we see the commercial real estate going to go through this conversion. We see malls and office buildings converted to data storage, data centers, energy storage. And we now also have competition from work-at-home cultural changes. There are companies that are popping up that are work-at-home desks, work-at-home chairs, all kinds of work-at-home stuff because you got companies like Facebook, you got companies like Google, and basically they're not brought their people back. So you have hundreds of thousands of people that are working at home. You have those same people that will not want to return to work. They may change jobs unless they can stay working remotely or have some kind of hybrid work environment. So the new stimulus, we're looking at an additional $1 trillion in stimulus. $1,400 check is really in addition to what you've already got. If you got the $600 check is what they're talking about. So it's $1,400 in addition for every dependent. And we're looking at unemployment benefits from $100 to $400. That's not gone through yet. It's not been approved. The goal of Biden is to get that at the highest amount. We also have, again, this is not something I agree with, child benefits of $300 a month for children under 6. So they're getting $3,600 a year just for having a child. It's welfare. I mean, you can't explain it any other way other than welfare. So, and you have a $15 an hour minimum wage. So there's a lot of socialism coming down the pike. Whether you agree with that or not agree with that, that's up to you. But I'm here to report the economics and what to do with your money. Well, we do have a modified Green Deal coming down the pike. And the original Green Deal that the Squad of 5 or 6 or whatever it is at now, that was a $1.7 trillion spend over 10 years. The modified Biden Green Plan is $2 trillion over 4 years. And there are some sub-modifications that go into that plan. One is unionization, benefits, and more power to unions. Again, very political, right? 1.5 million in climate sustainable homes for the poor. Again, it didn't work during the Nixon, Jimmy Carter years when they built all this, low-income housing. Those things went vacant for 20 years and they got torn down. I don't understand why they're not learning from history. It doesn't work, has never worked. We look at Russia, it didn't work. We look at China, the low-income supported housing doesn't work. Again, so maybe they should think about maybe putting more money into education. Maybe, allowing doctors to have a free education. Maybe giving incentives, not just giving free tuition, because we've all seen how that works. I have as a trustee when people pass away and they just pay for their kids and their grandkids' education. They don't respect it. So they got to work out some kind of incentive plan rather than just building free housing. Electrical vehicles. Okay, this is not something I agree with. I don't want climate change. I like my snow in the mountains, right? I like not being, at 150 degrees. Solar powered homes, self-sustaining factories. Okay, good. I agree with that. Hydrogen power. Yeah, Tesla says it will never work. Well, they said that about electric cars too. And I think hydrogen has a very positive future because it will clean the air at the same time. And if they can convert hydrogen from being powered by fossil fuel and convert it into electrical transfusion, I think we're on to a saving the planet kind of idea. Electrical, wind, and nuclear. So these are things that are under this new Green Deal. And I think that they have a lot of benefits going forward. I just don't agree with all of it, but I probably never will. Again, I went into a lot more detail on this on the webinar. Again, if you want a copy of that webinar, and you just go ahead and send us an email to replay@hhrdm.com. Again, it's replay@hhrdm.com. We'll get you a copy of that. All right, let's talk about the thing that scares me the most. It's not the stock market. That is something that I can manage, and we understand the direction and the maneuvers, and that's something that I feel very comfortable with. I'm not worried about the inflation. Again, that is a storm that we can mitigate around. The thing that really has me worried is the new tax laws, because there always has been the goal of mitigation reduction strategies, and they're talking about literally taking every possible strategy off the table. Now, whether they get away with that or not, I don't know. But they're talking about taking away all kinds of things, any kind of deferral, any kind of exchanges, any kind of step up in basis. But if you look at the new brackets, it does open up some holes if it can be done correctly. We just don't know what holes they're going to stop yet. So you see, we're going from a 21% to a 28% on the corporate side, and the personal income tax brackets are going to go up by about 25%. Now, depending upon what state you live in, you could get just absolutely walloped. Let me show you this real quick. If you live in California, your top tax rate will be 62%. I can't speak socialism any other than that fact right there. New York and New York City, 62%. The lowest tax rate by state is Nevada and Florida. And if they cap the SALT, meaning they don't revise the SALT, that's the state and local income tax deduction on your itemized deductions, you're looking at a total at 49.34% and Florida at 49.34%. So still, even with some of the, what Biden said is we're not going to tax anybody more over $400,000. I'm telling you right now, it's not a fact. And we've already proven that. I went through the actual numbers in the webinar. So if you want to watch that, you can actually see how I prove that the $400,000 is not an accurate number. All right, stock market. Last year we had a stellar year. We came out of the mix here at one of the worst human tragedies in history, right? But look at what we did. 2020, the Dow was still up 7.3, the S&P up 16, the NASDAQ up 43. I'm anticipating another repeat this year, if not even better than that. So again, be prepared to take advantage of the right categories. I did get into a lot more of those categories on the webinar, and I am going to be doing a webcast if you're joining us late. That webcast is going to be on February 11th at 4 o'clock. There's only 100 slots available, so if you want to get on that, I would suggest make sure you get your reservation. And how you do that is go to hhrdm.com/webinars. Just register as a button as you see on your screen. And what we're going to do is we're going to be covering a tool that we use for our clients called eMoney. And basically what we're going to be covering is how to automate, simplify, and save your retirement by using this tool, by connecting all your accounts and seeing one single dashboard. We're also going to cover how to use the tool to make sure that if you ever have identity fraud, especially on checking accounts, which are not covered by identity theft coverage like a credit card, that you will be notified immediately instead of at the end of the month. We're also going to cover how to make sure that you can upload all of your healthcare documents, your trust documents into a safe place, because we learned during this pandemic that if you get rushed into an ICU, either at home or afar, doesn't mean that your family has access to all your legal documents that they will need to be able to deal with the hospital or worst case with death, right? And so we're going to show you how to use this tool to get everything into an electronic version and how to permission in family so that they have access to it in case of an emergency. We're also going to show you how to determine how much you can spend without running out of money. Okay, again, that's going to be on February 11th, 4 o'clock PST. I see a little mistake up there. It is not 4 o'clock a.m., so we'll have our tech team change that. It'll be 4 o'clock p.m., just a note, 4 o'clock p.m., and you can see it there on the top just in case you're looking at that. And I just got a little chat here. It looks like it's already been corrected. Okay, well, way to go, team. All right, so timeline of opportunities. We're going to get into our economic mapping. We call it EMAP or Econ Map. And we started this last March, and this brings all of this data into one simple place of what the future looks like based upon all these moving factors. Well, we see employment still is going to hit a low end somewhere around February or March when we start to see the virus start to clean up, and then we're going to start to see employment increase. Now, real estate, we're going to push ahead. You see, I made a revision to this econ map because if they push the foreclosure and forbearance delay into September, we don't see a drop in the real estate market until the end of the fourth quarter of 2021. So these factors are working hand in hand. What it means is our prime opportunity to buy real estate will most likely be somewhere at the end of the year, at the beginning of next year, if we're looking at it categorically. Again, you always have to look at and evaluate each piece of property separately. Taxes, I don't think we're going to see any major tax increases in the next 6 months. But I think by the end of the year, once we see economic recovery, we could see some major tax changes and they could be retroactive. So this is our big alert, right? The stock market under Biden, we see it continuing up because the stimulus package is going to push it up all the way until the mid to end of 2022. But going into 2023, we're very unsure about the stock market stability, meaning that there's things in bucket 1 and bucket 2 I'm not going to worry about. But if we're in bucket 3, we're going to have to look at how to protect the downside in that year. Actions to take. All right, number 1, you have to change the paradigm of your portfolio into a paradigm portfolio. You cannot stay in the old strategy of throw into indexes and just hope for the best, or just buy and hold. Things change. If you would have bought and hold manufacturers of 8-tracks, you'd be out. If you would have bought and hold manufacturers of cassette players, you would have been out. You have to continually evolve. It would have went from 8-tracks, it would have went to cassettes, it would have went to CDs, it would have went to Blu-ray, it would have went to streaming. This is the same thing that the paradigm portfolio is structured on. So refinancing real estate, get on that because I think interest rates will go up later next year or late this year into next year. Tips, because we're looking at massive inflation, convert any kind of Treasury inflation protected securities. Convert any mid or long-term bond holdings into equivalent tips. This way you take advantage of that upside of the bad side of inflation. Consider reverse mortgages. I'm still very pro reverse mortgages. I think they're great vehicles, especially if you're going to invest in real estate. Reduce long-term bonds and intermediate-term bond allocations for right now, and analyze your annuities for the inflation. Because if you've had companies that have reduced the caps, then that is something that you have to consider. And I can, give you just a handful out of 300 companies that issue annuities. There's been about 30 that are continuing to lower caps in a time where they should actually be increasing. Look for annuity swaps. Right now, you should be computing what your risk to net after-tax analysis is. I always get this question, Ken, what does that mean? Well, it means that if I'm going to target a 10% portfolio, but I am not being tax-wise or tax-efficient. And so what's happening is I might net 5% on my 10% rate of return. I just showed you those tax rates, right? So I might net 5%, but I'm taking the risk of a portfolio of a 10% target. What the smart person does is they figure out a good tax plan that targets 10%. But after tax, you might net 8 or 9. Now, that means that you could do another thing. If under a untax managed strategy, you're only netting 5, you could actually target a much lower risk portfolio. So instead of targeting a 10% portfolio that might have a lot of risk and volatility, with a tax-wise plan, you could target a 6 or 6.5% portfolio. With a tax-wise strategy, you're still netting the same rate of return, that's just smart money, right? So tax plan, tax plan, tax plan. Hey, before I wrap it up today, I want to give you this option of going to our YouTube channel and subscribing to the YouTube channel. This way, new videos and information that comes up, you will be alerted of it. Lastly, if you got some questions, give our office a call. It's 844-702-1040. And before I sign off, listen, have a great weekend. We're on the road to recovery. The vaccine is out there. This is going to be probably one of the best years in the market that I'll probably ever experience. And it will be one of the best economies. You just got to play it right and make sure you got a solid, integrated, proactive tax plan.